Welcome back to my channel. Doing something new today, doing some watercoloring and some stamping using the Tim Holtz Crazy Birds. This one's pretty funny. I've never used this bird before particularly, but I use VersaFine black ink to stamp it because it doesn't bleed with the watercolor. And I'm going to stamp it out 4 times, 2 times on white cardstock, which is the basil marshmallow, and then 2 times on watercolor paper. So the cardstock is going to be on the right, the watercolor paper is on the left. The upper 2 birds on each of the papers I'm doing watercolor, and the lower I'm going to use distressed inks. Now the inks that I'm using, the colors, is peacock feathers, fossilized amber, and then the brown is gathered twigs. So I'm going to start off coloring in with the distressed inks, and I like to start off with just the brown all throughout. So the gathered twigs I add to the whole bird, and then I just add the other colors on top. First I did the watercolor paper, and now I'm just using the cardstock. The colors are very different. The watercolor, you can actually lift color off of it, whereas the cardstock, I didn't add any gesso to it. So I have to accept whatever color it is. It can get kind of dark. So the more color I add to it, the darker it gets, and I'm unable to lift any of it off. I tried to be very careful not to get into the eye. So I'm adding just some clear water, trying to see if I can lift any off. And no, it didn't lift off at all. Then I go in with the yellow, which is the fossilized amber. Kind of give the tummy a little bit of color. Now the colors that I've chosen are to match the stripe paper that came in the November Clique kit from Illustrated Faith. You'll see it here in a minute because I'm going to use it for a comparison to make sure that the colors match, at least for my watercolors. I love peacock feathers. It's such a pretty color. And I use the little cubes. I have some of the bigger stamp pads that I've had for years, but I really like the cubes better. They stay juicy and wet for a long time. I've had them for several years. I don't store them upside down. I store them right side up, and I keep them in the little tin. I know Tim Holtz, he has a little tin that he sells to hold all of his uh, cubes, and I keep them by color. So I have other stamps that are brown that I keep in the tins. So I keep all the browns together, all the yellows together, and I have 2 for green and then 1 for blue. And of course pinks. Oh my goodness, they go on and on. I have lots and lots. Okay, so this is my uh, Russian White Nights watercolors. I absolutely love these. I do. I love to watercolor. I found this to be very relaxing. And you know what? If you're going to do this, you might as well stamp out as many as as you want or you can, and just watercolor. Since you're going to get your watercolors out anyway, just do several of them like I've done here. And the reason why I did 4 is because I wasn't sure which color would work. So I went ahead and tried these 4, and I do choose one of them that's going to match the paper. Now, I have to say, I chose the Crazy Birds because, oh, there's the paper, as you saw, very quickly. Uh, I chose the birds because the photo that I'm using is of my grand dog. She is quite the little character, and these birds really do you know, match the photo that, you know, because it's kind of looking at her like, what the heck? So with this bird on the top that I'm working on right now, all I'm doing is I'm adding just water to the watercolor paper first, and then I'm adding the brown. And it seems to give it a more muted look when I do it this way. And it's hard to tell, but because of the sheen or the reflection of the water and the lights, but there is around the eye, there really is paint there, but you can't really tell because it's so wet. And then it ended up being like too much water, or I didn't let it dry between each of the colors and they kind of bled together, which is kind of, bad on my part, but, wasn't being very patient because normally I would just go ahead and just wait between each color and let it dry. And of course, I didn't do this with the cardstock because it would not have acted the same. They have such totally different properties. And in fact, I can tell you right now, the one that I chose is the one that I'm working on. It matched the paper the best. So I'm thinking that if I would just, add water to the watercolor on the cardstock, that it would lift up some of the color, but it doesn't. But it does on the watercolor paper. You can see how faded it is. And if anyone wants to know the names of the colors that I've chose, just let me know and I will uh, look it up. I don't have my paints in front of me. And I thought that the yellow was just a little too yellow. So by adding a little bit of the brown, and I do know that the brown is raw sienna. And what I'm doing here is a little bit of the paint got underneath the bird itself. And so I was able to, like erase it with just some clear water. And this is where the bird the paper was just too wet because it's really bled and it bled too much for me and I could not fix it. The I really love the colors that you know that I've chosen for the bird on the watercolor paper, but I think because I didn't let it dry in between, it I didn't like the look of it. So here I've got them all cut out, and I do have the die cut. So there's the die cut that it comes in a set, and it's just perfect. It even cuts between the legs. I mean, that's how intricate the die cut is. See the little tuft on its head? Cuts those all out. I love it. Yeah, I won't be fussing cutting that out, that's for sure. So the one that I'm pointing to, that's the one that I'm choosing. The one in the upper right is the one that's going to go. It's winner, winner, chicken dinner. And I know I was talking and in this video and I had to cut it out. There was some commotion going on. So I had to let it go. All right, so here we are with the papers. So what I've done, and you can hardly tell, is I did some hand stitching on the edges of the stripe paper. It's a dark gray. I was going to use black, but I realized I didn't have black. And then the orange paper is a 3x4 card, and even though I am not a cut apart person, I thought that this really went well, and it gave a good base to put the title, which is Sweet Girl. Now, the Sweet Girl also came with the November Clique kit. Everything on here except for the stamp was from the kit. And the white is just American Craft cardstock is my base that everything is on. Scalloped paper that I'm going to uh, that I'm working on right now is also from the kit, but it's from Crepe Paper Carousel, and that's a little sliver that I had. I have a little bit more of that, which I really did like. I had done a page in a video earlier where I had used watercolor pencils coloring in those scallops. I'm using black soot on the edges of that scallop paper, and that way you can see it a little bit better. Trying to place the bird, just want to see how close I want the bird to be to the title. Do I want it up on the top of the paper or more on the black line? Trying to decide. And then I love the T-square. I It really does make a difference in helping things stay straight. I am usually not too worried about it being straight, but with the stripes going vertical and then trying to get things to line up, it really needed to be straight. So still trying to mess with the bird. I'm using tacky glue. It's a quick dry tacky glue to put this paper down. It's a little bit warped, because it did have some water on it, and I decided to put it on the top. And because it is warped, yeah, I had to flatten it out with my hand, and then I end up using a stapler to help keep it in place because I wanted to work on the rest of the page. Now it does dry quickly, but the paper kept curling. So there's the stapler. That way I can put the rest of it down. So I use my ATG for the 3x4 card, and I'm actually going to use some foam tape for the photo. It was a pretty easy page put together, even with the hand stitching. There was just a straight stitch. Easy peasy to do. And I found it very relaxing. Like I said, I enjoy watercoloring. I find that to be more relaxing than scrapbooking. So there are some resources that I can, send you to if you're interested, at least trying out watercolor. I am not an expert, but I really do enjoy it. Lindsay Wyrick is the person that I go to the most. She has some easy watercolor things to do. All right, so it was hard to tell exactly what that was, but it's a Shimmers products called Night Moves, and the label was yellow because in my box that when I received all of my shimmer products, I've complained about this before, but the yellow is the one that leaks, and it leaked out, and it had colored the title of it. So it's the Night Moves. A little bit of sprinkles, and now I'm going to add some sequins to it. I am waiting for my sequins from Spiegel Mom's scraps. I'm waiting for those to come. So in the meantime, I'm continuing to use up the sequins that I have. And this is kind of an iridescent color. And then I also use the dark gray in the smaller size that I have. I am using the Zots for it. They're like little glue circles to go underneath the sequins whenever I put them down. But I'm really disenchanted with that. I know some people do use it, and I've tried it obviously, and so I am going back to what I had started back when I used to do sequins on cards. So I will be using those in future videos because I had to order it off of Amazon and I got them in this week. And then there's just one more thing that I add to this page. It came from the kit, and it is my favorite color, which is green, the little suede bow. Now, I didn't know if I was going to be able to use the bow. In fact, I almost forgot about it. I looked through all of my, um, what am I saying? The die cuts and trying to see if there was anything else I could put on the page. But the only thing that I found that I thought would work was the bow. And so I end up putting the bow at the top of the 3x4 card above Sweet Girl. And that pretty much completes my layout. I really like the way that this turned out. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great day. Bye.